This is a worm bin. So when I take a cover off, I make sure that there's no flies. One fly can lay 700 eggs. So you go from one fly to 700 to 700 times 700. The next thing that we have in here are a few sections of dry newspaper. If the walls are wet from condensation and it's dark, your worms are going to crawl right out of your worm bin and get out on the floor around the worm bin. This worm bin was fed roughly 35 days ago. Banana peels and apple cores and onion and you name it. Everything is gone except for a few items like grape stems, flower stem. There's a piece of onion skin that also hasn't decomposed, has turned into worm casting. So we'll dump out the worm bin. Well, that's an empty worm bin now. We use dry newspaper in the bottom of the worm bin to soak up that moisture. I have a wooden base that goes in, usually that goes in very close to the bottom, a little bit of dry paper underneath it. This is what I call the old diaper. Been in there for 3 to 4 months now, and it's moist, and I'm going to put a little bit of this moist paper in on top of the dry paper. This is all extra. This is what a dumped out worm bin looks like when it's ready to harvest. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a hand cultivator to kind of break it up. It's easier to break this stuff up with a hand cultivator in the bin than it is to try to break it up in the sieve. Get it so it's not in any clumps. These are the normal tools that I'm using in this process. I use a 2-quart measure, gloves if you want them, paintbrush to move castings around, rubber. If the castings are a little stickier, you have to use that. We're going to take 2 quarts of this material, put it in the sieve, and sit there. Okay, so this is now the separated, the worms are in here, the bedding is in here, any food that hasn't decomposed is back into the worm bin. This stuff here has got quite a bit of moisture in it, and as you put food in here, depending 100% on that diaper underneath to absorb all that extra moisture, I add something dry, so you have to have both moist and dry in a sort of a mixture. And then to get the last of this out, and use our paintbrush.
Would you just get this from like Lowe's or something?
No, I have to make them.
Oh, really?
There didn't turn out to be a supply of sieves that were really of the size that I was looking for.
Yeah.
So all this is a utility can that you might use to change the oil in your car.
Right, yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
Cut the bottom out of it, and I glue the hardware cloth, which is the 1/8 square, into the bottom of it. That's how I make the sieve. I've got this lid on it so flies can't get into it. So what we have in here is we have the kitchen scraps. Gets wet, and you don't want it to be too wet, so I mix in some dry material with it. And then what looks like maybe worm castings is a combination of coffee grounds and dried worm castings that are mixed together to get the moisture of the coffee grounds so they're not too wet. So the coffee grounds in here represent about 25% of the food, and then the rest of it is kitchen scraps. And then that's all mixed with dry material to control the moisture. This one has just been harvested, so we're going to feed them for the next month. That's 4 quarts of food. And then the worm bin will be closed up. In that month, they'll turn all of this stuff into worm castings. That's the old diaper, right? That was on top, holding the moisture in, keeping it dark. And if this gets eaten up by the worms, you have to replace it.
What's the time frame on like harvesting, like what we just did?
What I normally do is I'll harvest and feed at the same time. Okay, so I'm putting in 4 quarts of food on the same day that I harvest. Wait 30 days, put in another 4 quarts. Wait 30 days, put in another 4 quarts. So I put in a total of 12.
Yeah.
and then I'll wait 40 days, and then I'll harvest. So about every 3 to 4 months, I harvest. And in between, I'm feeding about once every 30 days. So the next thing is to hold the moisture in, because everything below the plastic is moist. So we put that in there to hold that moisture in so it doesn't get dried out on top. And then we're gonna keep the light out, and we're gonna help to keep the walls dry with the layer of dry newspaper next. And then we put in our preventive fly paper that hopefully will catch any stray fly that gets in there before it has a chance to mate and reproduce. Cover this up with a row cover to keep air going in, and making sure that no flies go in with it. And then I would update my log sheet with whatever I had done today, and then the cover goes on. Now in my worm farm, I actually don't use these covers, but I recommend if you keep this in your house and you have a cat, that you keep the cover on to keep the cat out.
Yeah.
Small kids, same thing. So that one's ready. It goes back into the worm farm now for 30 days. And then in 30 days, it'll be due for another 4 quarts of food.